Good morning. It is Friday, the 19th of June. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, bringing you all the news to start your morning live here on Euronews. Coming up, EU Council President Antonio Costa has opened a diplomatic channel with the Kremlin 5 years into the Russia-Ukraine war. During late-night talks here in Brussels, attended by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, some EU leaders voiced concern that they had not been consulted. We get the latest from our correspondent, Shona Murray. And during the night, President Zelensky asked EU leaders to endorse Ukraine's fast-track bid for EU membership. In a WhatsApp message to the press, the Ukrainian president said his country, quote, deserves full EU membership more than any other European country. He stressed that Ukraine had even, quote, survived Viktor Orban. Plus, a fresh face around the table. Hungary's new Prime Minister, Péter Major, received a hero's welcome at his first EU summit in Brussels. While the former Prime Minister Viktor Orban pursued a policy of vetoes on Ukraine-related issues, from financial support to EU enlargement, Péter Major has signalled a different approach. We'll have the latest with our Hungarian correspondent, Sándor Zsiros. But first, EU leaders will meet again this Friday as the second day of the EU summit gets underway. The talks come hot on the heels of a gathering of NATO defence ministers, during which the US Defence Secretary accused some allies of, quote, free-riding and criticised others for not allowing their air bases to be used by US jets during bombing operations in Iran earlier this year. Euronews' Shona Murray has been covering all these meetings for us and joins us now for an update. So Shona, tell us, what is the latest? Did that news that President Costa has opened the line with Moscow dominate the summit so far?
Well, good morning, Maeve. Indeed, Ukraine did not dominate the vast majority of proceedings last night. There was a lengthy discussion. Present in the room for most of it was President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. As we know, this has been a momentous week for Ukraine as they opened up the first cluster of chapters in relation to negotiations to become eventually a member of the European Union. So that was a key thing. Also, there's a discussion on the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. And then when Volodymyr Zelensky left, there was a robust debate about a decision by Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council, which represents the member states, to engage in a line of communication with the Kremlin on 2 occasions. Now, the idea being, of course, that when the war ends with Russia, it has to end in some sort of negotiations. But some countries like Germany, like France, the Baltic countries feel that this wasn't the right time because it's clear that Vladimir Putin is not ready to end the war and engage in any meaningful process. Other countries, though, other diplomats made the point that, at the end of the day, opening up channels isn't a very problematic issue if it does materialise that there could be some sort of peace process. And importantly, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainians are saying that the European Union, the EU, really needs to take better control when it comes to diplomatic channels in this regard. Maeve?
And meanwhile, Shona, over at the NATO headquarters, Pete Hegseth has been calling for a review of US military presence all across Europe in a very feisty address to NATO allies. Fill us in.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we saw a relatively successful G7 summit where the US and European allies seemed to have a much more convivial relationship. We saw the memorandum of understanding being signed by the United States and Iran. Relations between Trump and the allies seemed good. So there was an expectation that going into that defence ministerial meeting yesterday with NATO that there could have been, a reset in relations somewhat. But Pete Hegseth really upended that hope for allies. He went in there all guns blazing, lambasting allies for not helping the United States when it came to the war in Iran. He essentially said that they abandoned him. And then he announced what he described as a force review, essentially a review of the United States troops all across Europe and all across NATO territory. This comes at the same time when the United States is withdrawing assets and capabilities from the NATO force model. So things like certain submarines, F-16s, F-35, long-range strike capabilities will be removed and no longer accessible for NATO. Take a listen to Pete Hegseth yesterday.
The United States has defended Europe for generations. And the president said, all he said was that our jets would need to take off from bases in Europe or our ships from ports to strike targets in the Middle East. Iranian targets that threaten European interests even more directly than they threaten us. But too many of our allies said no. or tried to drown us in arcane legal debates, or criticized us publicly for doing what they aren't prepared or able to do themselves. It was shameful.
Pete Hegseth there, and before that, our Shona Murray reporting live from the EU summit. And now for the view from Sweden on Ukraine's EU membership aspirations. Our Europe editor, Maria Tadeo, spoke exclusively to their European Affairs Minister, Jessica Rosenkratz. But she started by asking her about the new tools on the table to counter the threat from China.
What I think and hope is that we go from words to action, because we have seen for a long time that China has an aim of global economic domination, and that can potentially, and we already see it, that can hurt European businesses. So we have to rethink if China doesn't want to work with the EU in a level playing field, then we have to reconsider our options when it comes to trade, and we have to make sure that we have European businesses back. It doesn't mean that we don't want free trade. We want to continue to work also with China, but it needs to be a fair game.
We heard right here from the president of Ukraine saying that he wants in the European Union and he wants that to happen fast. Is that something your country, in unanimity around the 27 member states, can allow for, a fast entry of Ukraine into this European Union?
I would say that our support to Ukraine is existential. It's a moral obligation, but it is also an investment in European security. And this also comes down to enlargement. And Ukraine belongs in the European family. So Sweden is very supportive of both opening negotiations, which we did. I personally took part earlier this week when we opened the first cluster, and we need to open even more clusters.
And do you have high hopes for the new Hungarian Prime Minister? He is facilitating the clusters and the negotiations, but he also said no fast track and there will be a referendum membership.
I mean, we see advancements from the Ukrainian side. They are doing real reforms back home, which is impressive during an ongoing war. And when a candidate country delivers so must the EU. And therefore, it's a must that we continue with these negotiations. And I hear a completely new tone from the new Hungarian government, which makes me very happy. And I hope now during this summit that we can be 27 countries agreeing on our support to Ukraine.
And sticking with that topic of Hungary, as you heard, Hungary's new Prime Minister, Péter Magyar, is at his very first European Council here in Brussels, opening a new chapter, many say, in EU-Hungary relations. For more, I'm joined now in the studio by our Hungarian correspondent, Sándor Zsiros. Just remind our viewers, how relevant is this change of guard?
Good morning, Maeve. Indeed, Péter Magyar has a completely new approach towards the European Union than what we saw during the power of Viktor Orbán, because, Orbán was blocking systematically each document which was related to the support of Ukraine, and Péter Magyar has a sort of constructive approach. He wants to negotiate. And then this is what we saw actually yesterday, because at the end of the day, the joint declaration went out in the name of the EU 27, so Magyar approved it also, but he said that the document was actually voted down and they removed at his request one part which was related to fast-tracking Ukraine's membership. Nevertheless, this is a new approach and it was very warmly welcomed in Brussels. Several leaders praised Magyar. Let's maybe take a look of what Magyar said about this new approach yesterday when he arrived at the summit.
We will not agree on everything, but we will not fight just for the sake of fighting. We will not agree or veto here for domestic or party political reasons, but solely on basis of Hungarian interests. I think this will be a novelty, as well as the fact that for the first time since March 2025, there is a serious chance, that there will be an accepted European Council conclusion.
Péter Magyar there. And of course, we know the former Prime Minister Viktor Orbán was also in town these days. What was he up to?
Yes, so this was the first official trip of Orbán to Brussels since his election defeat. He met his fellow leaders from the Patriots for Europe political group, and he said that despite his defeat, Patriots will still grow and they will still win elections across Europe. Orbán also said that Péter Magyar should actually veto the next European budget to get more money from Brussels. So from this sentence, we can see that Orbán did not change at all. His political stance is the same related to Europe as it was in the past. And his political future uncertain. Sándor Zsiros, thank you so much for that update there. And of course, for all the latest from the EU summit and the tense talks today on the EU's €2 trillion long-term budget, our rolling live blog continues on euronews.com. But now, moving on to Switzerland, where the US-Iran deal was expected to be formally signed today. Today was officially meant to mark the end of the US-Israeli war against Iran and the beginning of the new stage of negotiations. A 14-point memorandum of understanding setting out the framework for talks during a 60-day negotiation period was, though, already signed remotely by the US and Iran on Wednesday. For more, we can head straight to Switzerland and bring in AP correspondent Philip Crowther. Good morning, Philip. So just tell us what exactly is happening. Why was the signing ceremony called off? And what does it say about the Trump administration's confidence in this very deal?
I'll tell you what, we'll just stick around here and wait and see if Vice President J.D. Vance maybe turns up in the end. He has postponed his trip for now. That does not mean that he might be here later, maybe at the weekend. All the other parties also stand ready, not here in Switzerland right now, but in their respective capitals, to potentially travel over here to Switzerland for talks on Iran's nuclear program. Those parties, of course, being the United States, Iran, but also the mediators of this memorandum of understanding that has been signed, those mediators being Pakistan and Qatar. Now, there's no official reason for there to be a signing ceremony here in Switzerland. You'd like to have one, of course, if you're proud of the agreement that has been reached. Maybe that is simply not the case for the United States. A lot of criticism coming from pretty much both sides of the political aisle, including Republicans, of this deal that was reached between the United States and Iran. Again, no reason really to sign it again, because it has already been signed by Iran in Tehran, by US President Donald Trump in Versailles over dinner with his French counterpart, and also by the mediator Pakistan. Does it show a lack of confidence in this deal from the United States? Well, maybe. It is something that the Trump administration is having a very hard time selling back in Washington. And that might be one of the reasons why this trip so far is not working out. J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, though, made it clear yesterday that he is still willing to travel here to start another round of negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, because remember that these were discussions between the United States and Iran that were actually happening before the war began at the end of February.
OK, Philip Crowther. But of course, some good news with oil prices dropping as the Strait of Hormuz gradually reopens. Thank you so much for that live broadcast there from Switzerland. And for more analysis, we can now bring in Tommy Huhtinen, the director of the European People's Party think tank here in Brussels, known, of course, as the Wilfred Martin Centre. Good morning, Tommy.
Good morning.
Tell us, what is the view from Brussels on this US-Iran deal?
Well, as you said, you have very clearly two dimensions. As you mentioned, markets seem to be very happy. Oil price is going down, so you have impression it's a lasting peace. But as the cancellation of the meeting in Switzerland indicates, the deal is very fragile, and the problem remains. You have the issue of Iran nuclear capabilities, enrichments to 60%, Strait of Hormuz, and how is that going to open up, and the regional implications.
And that's the thing, the fact that the US Vice President is no longer travelling to Switzerland for the signing nor the talks. It's a bad sign, right? Well,
I think that there's two dimensions. They try to hurry it up. But you have the dimension of with Iran, the negotiations, who is starting first, who is making the first commitment. On the other hand, you have the impression that in Washington there's a high pressure from conservatives' side, but in overall about the deal. I think that they are going to manage that, and I think Vance is maybe trying to avoid a situation where he's kind of somehow going there and trapped. So normally in those meetings, when you go there, it's normally for signing. You need to know what's going to be agreed, and that's clearly is not the case this time.
And of course, Lebanon is left out of the deal.
Absolutely.
What leverage do the Europeans have here?
Well, as Macron has said, we need to be involved. leverage, there's not so much. There's this discussion of 300 billion euros. Of course, that's just a framework to be agreed in upcoming 60 days. Maybe that gives some leverage, but it very clearly indicates when we need to be. Lebanon is the crucial point, because as you mentioned, Israel is out of the deal, and we will see how they react.
And last night at the EU summit, Tommy, we saw a big fight among EU leaders regarding Antonio Costa, the president's liaisons with the Kremlin. What is your view here? Was he right to get in touch?
I think what is very important, especially in the European side, when we have various players, we have EU institutions, we have head of states, we are investing a lot on Ukraine, and we have Ukrainians, especially as Ukraine in the future will be seen more as a net security provider. And clearly the coordination has not worked. You should be more or less in the same chat group on information. I think that's the issue, because if that coordination does not happen, there's two questions there. First of all, what is the signal? Have we agreed? We are pushing the same message? Because you should. Secondly, is Ukraine involved?
So was Antonio Costa wrong?
I think it's very clear that the coordination has not worked. I think that's crucial on this issue, and I think many head of states have indicated that.
Okay. Topic that will be dominating, again, the talks here in Brussels. Tommy Hooton, thank you so much for joining us here on Europe Today. But now, of course, despite the busy week on the geopolitical and diplomatic front, the FIFA World Cup tournament has been providing ample drama, lots of surprises and, of course, unforgettable moments. Our Jakub Janis refreshes our memories now on the 5 biggest moments of the very first week.
Skip the standard scorelines. The opening tournament round has delivered pure drama, historic records and unbelievable spectacles. And your reporter wanted to look at the top 5 group stage champions. It's a bit subjective, but these 5 are completely undeniable. Let's start with number 5. Who is the strongest team? Following a clinical opening round, France looks like the absolute front-runner, leaping ahead of Spain, who unexpectedly drew against newcomers Cape Verde. Also, a brace from Real Madrid star Kylian Mbappe has firmly fueled French optimism. Number 4. When it comes to the best individual performance, it has to be Lionel Messi. Do you remember that in 2018, pundits claimed it was his final World Cup match? Now we are 8 years later, and this 38-year-old icon stunned the world with an opening hat-trick, matching Miroslav Klose's 16-goal record. So let's be honest, his legendary status remains completely unmatched. At number 3, the tournament's biggest disappointment goes to Messi's nemesis, Cristiano Ronaldo. He already made history playing against Congo, matching Messi's record of playing in 6 World Cups. However, what followed highly disappointed Portuguese fans. With no goals, no successful dribbles, and 2 missed clear opportunities, it is simply not the Ronaldo we remember. And here goes number 2. A moving display followed Germany's dominant 7-1 triumph over debutants Curaçao. And at full time, German stars Jonathan Tah and Felix Nemecha joined hands with the opposing players for a pitch-side prayer, offering a testament of their shared faith. So maybe football unites after all. Finally, number 1. And Norway's ultimate fan culture. After 28 years away, they returned in style, leading a group with France and Senegal after beating Iraq 4-1. And alongside Erling Haaland's brace, their passionate supporters flooded social media, bringing a vibrant Viking spirit to the local stadiums. And with a massive number of games still left to play, this tournament is only just heating up. So if you missed any of these incredible moments, make sure you stay glued for all the upcoming matches.
Jakub Janis reporting for us there. And for more news on the FIFA World Cup or any stories breaking across Europe, including the sizzling temperatures that are creeping back just weeks after a deadly heatwave gripped the continent, you can always visit our website, euronews.com. But that brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for spending your Friday morning with us. Do get in touch with any questions or comments. Our email address is europetoday@euronews.com. But in the meantime, take care and see you soon on Euronews.